This is another thing from Morgan's repository. He is doing a lot of work in agentic coding, and he's setting things up in JAX. A lot of sort of tests from our own work in orthogonal and DevaWorm. So this is one of the things he did was this repository called Spinning Up ELF. So this is spinning up active inference. This is a 16 module curriculum bridging reinforcement learning and active inference in JAX. So this is called Spinning Up Active Inference. So it's a way to sort of put together a course that bridges reinforcement learning and active inference. So there are a bunch of notebooks in this course where there are a bunch of demos. There are these utilities, and then there are these different things in here. So the description of this is from Thorndike's Cats to the Free Energy Principle, a hands-on curriculum bridging reinforcement learning and active inference. And so the description here is that in 1898, Thorndike's cats learned to escape puzzle boxes by trial and error. So Thorndike was an early psychologist who did these experiments with cats where they had to sort of figure out how to get out of a box or escape a box. And then in 1948, Tolman, who was another early psychologist and neurologist, showed that rats built cognitive maps. So if you're familiar with spatial cognition, there's this concept of the cognitive map, and it goes back to Tolman. And this is related to what Thorndike was doing at the turn of the last century. In 1997, Schultz revealed that dopamine neurons compute prediction errors, the same signal as the TD learning algorithm proposed a decade earlier, TD being a component of reinforcement learning temporal differencing. So this is like tracing this intellectual lineage from like spatial cognition to problem solving to then the sort of the basis for reward when you make the right decision and the right prediction. So what in 1997 was found was that dopamine neurons actually are the thing that is the unit of reward because it basically controls prediction error. So it allows people or animals to minimize their error when they make the right decision. And so this is where you have temporal differencing over time to evaluate your options, to evaluate the decisions that you've made in the past versus the decisions you're making in the present. So there's a lot of intellectual territory. And of course, the concept of reinforcement learning predates 1997. And that's because reinforcement learning or behaviorism was a sort of the dominant paradigm of neuropsychology and psychology before cognitive science came about. So that was in the earlier part of the 20th century. So we did a lot of reinforcement learning experiments or different types of behaviorist experiments back then, but we didn't necessarily have a good handle on sort of the accounting of reinforcement learning. That is, what is the thing that's driving it? And I did a feature in the meeting probably about a year ago now that went over how this finding in 1997 was great, but too many people have leaned into it as like an absolute truth. And it turns out that dopamine does a lot of other things in the brain. So sometimes we have these findings that seem nice and neat, and then we spend more time on them and we find out that maybe they're not as nice and neat as we would like. So just an aside there on reinforcement learning and sort of inference. But anyways, this curriculum traces that intellectual lineage from animal behavior experiments through modern reinforcement learning into what we call active inference and the free energy principle. And of course, the active inference and the free energy principle was something that was proposed in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was, kind of a new approach to inference and how to think about adaptive behavior. And so this is kind of leading us into this era of active inference and the free energy principle. And so this is the curriculum that allows you to sort of implement this stuff in code. You will implement every algorithm, say every correspondence, and understand why these two frameworks, seemingly so different, are solving the same problem. This is interesting because I've been kind of exploring this, or we've been exploring this in our different talks to the Active Inference Institute. So we've been presenting at the Active Inference Institute Symposium the last 2 years, and haven't had an explicit talk on this, but in the talks that we have had in the last 2 years, there's been this connection between reinforcement learning and active inference, mainly in terms of the math of the different approaches. But I think maybe this year might be the year that we kind of go into that direct comparison of reinforcement learning and active inference, and what is the connection there. I think that'd be, maybe this is like going to be a key component of that talk, running through these notebooks and seeing if we can like kind of gain some new insight into this. And like sometimes you're saying you're solving the same problem, but sometimes they're very interesting and important differences as well. So this is modeled in an OpenAI spinning up an RL course, and is designed as a pre-course introduction to Neuromatch's Academy computational neuroscience curriculum. So it's kind of taken from these different curricula and then refactored into JAX. So this is kind of a unique course that draws on other courses. So there are these different components here where we have reinforcement learning algorithms, we have active inference, the free energy principle, the reinforcement learning active inference bridge, neuroscience grounding, animal behavior history, Bayesian brain, differentiable inference, GPU accelerated AIF, multi-agent / social, embodied robotics, primary language, and environments. So all these things are kind of unified in this curriculum, whereas it's covered maybe sporadically in the other curricula. So I like this curriculum because it kind of goes over everything here. It gives you the sort of the basis for reinforcement learning algorithms. It gives you this sort of basis for active inference algorithms, which are different. The free energy principle, which also has different algorithms and different mathematical formalizations. Then you have the neuroscience grounding, so you need to know the history, what the findings are, what people, kind of where this is coming from in terms of neuroscience. The animal behavior, which is different, it's ethological, and as such, you're going to have a lot of different types of things, different types of experiments done. It covers specifically reinforcement schedules, cognitive maps, Tinbergen's 4 questions. So it's very different than the neuroscience grounding, which is more about dopamine signaling, successor representations, cognitive map building instead of following cognitive maps, and then some of this other type of behavioral choice studies. And then, of course, the work of Pavlov, which is conditioning. Then there's the Bayesian brain, which is where we have these different models of predictive mechanisms in the brain, Helmholtz variational inference, generative models and belief propagation, which is sort of core stuff in active inference. And so, yeah, there's this Bayesian sort of focus, and of course you could have a non-Bayesian focus as well. It's just that a lot of this has been developed through Bayesian modeling and statistics. Then there's differentiable inference, which is where we have JAX.grad that moves through the forward algorithm. We have these learning A-B choice matrices from data. We have GPU accelerated active inference. We have this other multi-agent social, expanding this to a multi-agent social context. We have an expansion to the embodied robotics area, which includes things like proprioceptive inference, and continuous forms of active inference, and then these kind of environments where, or these test beds where you can use different types of modeling environments to make the behavior explicit. So remember, we're doing simulations, so we need to model the behavior. So for OpenAI, they use Mujoko, which is that physics simulator we talked about that people were using to model the neuromechanics of Drosophila. We have the Hugging Face Deep RL course, which uses a variety of environments, including Atari games, Unity, Vizdoom, and Godot. And then for the Neuromatch Academy, they have custom tutorials and custom environments. For this curriculum, they're using NeuroNav Grid Worlds, PyBullet, and that's that is sort of something that is different from the other examples. Okay, so what is the gap that's being filled by this course? No existing resource teaches reinforcement learning and active inference side by side in the same environments with escalating complexity, grounded in the animal behavior research that motivated both frameworks. Spinning Up teaches reinforcement learning, but not active inference. That's the OpenAI course. Whereas Hugging Face teaches practical deep learning, reinforcement learning, but no theory of mind. NeuroMatch covers Bayesian inference in one day of reinforcement learning, but never mentions the free energy principle. We bridge all three. So this is great because I think, especially with like the NeuroMatch course, this is something that, for one thing, a lot of these courses have to make decisions on what to include. Like I know the NeuroMatch course was time constrained. So what is the most important stuff we can learn about this area? And then that importance criterion is often like, it's the particular group that's working on it. So, you have to say like, what are the most important things you need to know about this thing, about X? And then, you make a list of things. And oftentimes that maybe isn't complete. So I think this is great because it kind of rethinks like what's important to learning these things. And, so a lot of times we do make those decisions when we're designing curricula. So we're making decisions about what to include, what not to include. So again, yeah, this is a great curriculum, and it's all kind of on Morgan's GitHub here with these different parts. You walk through the different notebooks, and so check it out. Looks like Morgan's here, and he's ready to go.
My ears were burning. There's also some things that again, I'm trying. This is an experiment.
Yeah.
Right. I've got some papers that Claude has written. Again, you can find these on my GitHub, and it's I'm very happy with the output.
Yeah.
But there's always like there's something subtle. There's always something subtle where it's just like Claude's not wrong, but it's like, but I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
So which again is a part of the learning, right?
Yeah.
This is like, why did Claude say that? Because because I know the prompts,
right?
Like I know what I said, right? And of course, probably the largest guide to what you see in Spinning Up in ALF is Brian Smith's step-by-step tutorial in active inference.
Yeah.
Right. but why isn't that listed?
Right.
like, yes, I did include those other things, right? Because again, I can fondly remember when OpenAI had as its mission an educational um, teaching component.
Right, but that's not so much true anymore. Yeah.
An open source mission. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember when OpenAI had in-person events at their their building. I mean, it was hard to get in, but
Right.
when they did the StarCraft 2 event. I don't know if you saw that.
I don't remember that now.
This is so the cool thing with StarCraft 2 is that I think it's you have 5 players play.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of there's this extra kind of team component to it. So it was a small number, but it was a multi-agent system.
Yeah.
Anyway, the there's just some things that in how Claude's markets, like the history that it gives from the prompt.
Yeah.
is incomplete or is skewed, and I specifically added things like Ida Momenejad's neuronav,
Right.
It did start as I want to do Ryan Smith's course, but I don't want to do it in MATLAB.
Right.
that was I mean, if you want to speak to the biggest motivation on this, it's just
Let's not use MATLAB. That's the motivation.
I'm just not gonna play. I'm not gonna try and make MATLAB work somehow with Octave.
Yeah.
But I also felt that there was then the other thing being that I needed real tests for the code, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't so again, Ryan Smith has some when you are able to give Claude so many examples, as Ryan does have, even if it's in another language. This is something that it's quite good at, where it's just sure, I can take this and I can translate it into Haskell.
Yeah.
The Ralph Loop guy, when he visited the tower, he kept on saying so I took this thing that's working and I rewrote it in Erlang.
Yeah.
He's like, why did I choose Erlang? Because I thought it was funny. and yeah, so and recently Russ Poldrack, who's the chair of psychology now at Stanford, and his former postdoc Chris Gorlowski just had the same conversation where they were meeting, talking about hey, we should just rewrite everything in MATLAB. was their version of the joke.
Yeah.
Instead of converting it. But so he had those examples, but at the same time, Ida had this project where she was giving, she was trying to do Atari, but for animal behavior experiments.
Right.
And anyway, it just, again, speaks to this. Somebody described it, which I thought was interesting, which was how your interactions with Claude, or with large language models like this, is jagged.
Yeah.
And that you see, you see brilliance, and you see like almost a lack of common sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, like somehow together,
Yeah.
And that, and how that potentially brings out a reaction in this. That it was interesting. I was I like reading Dave Weiner. This is Winer, the creator of RSS, or co-creator, as well as co-creator of podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
But he was talking about, he was getting a human reaction of frustration in talking with these agents, and I think it was part of that was this jagged thing, where it was just like again, you get this human reaction of this is how I would respond.
Yeah.
if the interaction was with another human, I would naturally respond with kind of like, I need to say something.
Right.
And yet, in this case, there is no better way of saying it than like, you're getting frustrated with this thing is not like voicing your frustration is not helpful.
Right.
Because the agent literally is what it is in terms of fixed weight. Like,
actually, there's an interesting relationship between that and like a bureaucracy. It's like when you interact with a bureaucracy, it's kind of similar to that.
Yes. But you mean like when you're dealing with the phone system, like on hold, or like it also just in terms of like, I need to transfer you to this other department.
Yeah, or you have to fill out these forms, and it's like, well,
yes,
I don't, and then like that, those are the rules, so I can't do anything about that.
right, yeah. I could yell at this low level person.
Right, yeah.
but will it change my reality?
Right.
Anyway, I do think there's some insightful things though, as well, in Claude's curriculum, and so like there's parts of it that historically it's again, it's going off of very limited prompts, but it was quite good at filling in a lot of kind of missing material without prompting. But what I was the happiest about was actually some of the discussion that Claude does regarding the numerical differences in reinforcement learning and active inference, and as well as interestingly, some numerical pitfalls, or issues that might come up, numerical instabilities that that should be dealt with proactively. And yeah, so, to some extent, I would say, I gave Claude more detail and examples, obviously via code, right? And so I think that is kind of natural, but it was super appreciated, or like super, um, um, yeah. I mean, it's the kind of thing where it's some of these projects. I really wish I could get like kind of like domain experts to read and evaluate, right? Um, so I yeah, uh, uh, I don't know if it's worth going through. I mean, I've there's a data set that was released in neuroimaging, um, and it's just last year, and it's kind of special one because it's a neuroimaging data set, um, but it's one in which they scan the same subjects 7 times, or maybe 8 times, 7 or 8 times, and so that's pretty unique. That's very very rare. Maybe if you're doing some sort of longitudinal thing. In this case, each of those scans was a new scan. It was like first we do MEG, then we put them in a 3 Tesla like super scanner for with like really powerful gradients, and we get a very special diffusion scan. Then we put them, then we put them in another scanner where we get a traditional diffusion, plus we get all this quantitative relaxometry. That I could just keep going, right? Like it's just you get spectroscopy, you get TMS, you get resting fMRI, you get task fMRI, you get just keeps going. So it's incredibly unique data set to get this on same subjects. And anyway, I at this point you'll see I've got about 5 projects now that absolutely replace like I've processed the data using kind of what neuroimagers would consider the best tools to use to process each one of those, right? Which is basically me taking and processing the data using the Oxford's the FSL tools, right? And so like one I do that's what I was taught, and absolutely no, but Claude's running, right? So Claude has done all that, and then Claude's absolutely replicated that analysis, but done it all in JAX, and done it, like one, using that as a test oracle, and then 2, because again, like I know how to, I know what to tell it, like now do this, right? Like now add this, and I'm enough of a domain expert that I can give it that guidance. But it is the kind of thing where it's like I've in a couple days I've replicated magnetic resonance spectroscopy, and interestingly, if you go to my I actually like the tool name of this one because it's Mrs. Jax. It's like a MRS is magnetic resonance spectroscopy. So Mrs. Jax just happens to be. It's funny because there are tools. There's a tool set from Stanford that are kind of like MR tools, but the Stanford teams call them Mister. So they call it like, yeah. Anyway, so now I've got Mrs. Jax, and yeah, if you look at if you go to this page, or if you go to my GitHub for Mrs. Jax, you can see the history. It's again, I had a long history in spectroscopy. I was like biophysics as an undergrad. This is, like, I don't think I'm fooling myself, but it's just like, hey, this tool put together GABA editing, and, which is not something. I mean, again, this is a really unique data set because they include 7 Tesla data, where the higher field magnets give you more signal, and they can improve a lot of things, but they can also, people would sometimes say that they prefer structural imaging from a 3 Tesla because at 7 Tesla you have a harder time kind of controlling the field. But for spectroscopy, it's actually really useful. Anyway, it's again it's something where it's just like I feel like there is yeah, like this is I'd like confirmation from a real academic focused on this, but I feel like I've already done the validation work. And so I'll just end with Russ posted something yesterday on LinkedIn where it was another scientist saying that as an experiment he'd asked Claude one prompt, and Claude had worked on something for 20 minutes and had put together a comparison of three models doing quantitative behavior analysis that was basically his master's. And at this point, I'm not quite sure how to move forward. Like I've this data set has given me kind of every modality. What I did for the past couple days was actually started working on focused ultrasound because there's a company in San Francisco called Open Water that actually specifically got its money to develop in an open source manner. So they received their first $50 million in funding, where with the caveat that they have to use open source license on their hardware and software. So they partner with Kitware for their software development. So if you use CMake, Kitware. And yeah, so it's like as a test, what I did was I extended their software to do something like super valuable, which is to handle heterogeneous skull. Like their model, they use a uniform homogeneous skull model for their low intensity focused ultrasound, which you can't do. Like, you can't do and then use it in humans. Yeah, I mean, I connected. I knew that there was a JAX implementation of some focused ultrasound software that was available from London. Connected that with University of Utah, where I know that they've got a multimodal head model that includes CT data. So I can do confirmation of using just MRI so that you don't need to have CT, and you can produce what's called a pseudo CT. And then actually used, because I was doing this at home at night, just while like watching a movie, I'm sending it on the cloud to an A100. Again, cloud's writing all these scripts, right? So it's actually putting together a package, moving it to modal, and running it on an A100 to confirm, various heating and other safety benchmarks that the focused ultrasound community has put together. And these are the kinds of things where it's just like, I'm just trying to think of things that like it might be hard to get a spectroscopist to read a paper by Claude, but open water has good reason, commercial interest in having a solution, and so yeah, like I'm going to see whether if I submit this to their open source team. They've got a head of open source software, and they're actually sponsoring our global NeuroHack next, April 10th as well. So yeah, this is just another way to see if this is actually a more real world test.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan. That was great. Great the discussion about that. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I'm actually writing a agent assisted paper right now, and it's like you spend a lot of time going back and like doing additional sort of prompts and kind of cleaning up. And yeah, it's definitely, but it gives you a lot of like things you couldn't do otherwise. Like it enables a lot of like putting things into code and then kind of getting that fixed in some way. So it's like really I'm using it to put together this complex pipeline, and I don't think I could have done that on my own. So
yeah. I mean, and it's super interesting too, right? Where it's like lame, right? So it's llama, but it ends a e.
yeah,
Lame, like now think about how you can make an evolutionary model, evolutionary algorithm of this, where it's now able to be running things and creating, in a kind of Ken Stanley open-ended way. It can be putting together even new ones that you didn't even prompt.
right, yeah,
Right, and it can be like yeah. I really want to see what's going to happen at Gecko this year.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Because yeah. That's interesting. The how do you find? I find that the searches are really interesting too, because when I search on something in Google, I mean, I know that there is I know that there are ways to search, with additional terms and things like that. But it's interesting when you see a model search, like it will start you know, 10 or 15 prompts, 20 or 15 searches,
Yeah.
and be like sending out all sorts of variants of terms and things like that, and yeah, I mean, it's I found myself at home working on the focused ultrasounds, and I needed the University of Utah data set. Like Claude just kept on trying variants of University of Utah subnets, and it found the FTP sites just basically blindly.
Yeah.
I think we should do something. I think we should do something, or I want to reach out to Russ and see like what's beyond. I mean, Russ's question is like how should we be teaching students,
right,
to navigate this. I think there's a question of how should we be writing papers,
right? Yeah.
Because I mean, it's what are we trying? Yeah, and which I mean, it's sort of related to what everybody in GSOC is seeing with increased proposals. How is this obviously going to change the like applying for a grant,
right? Yeah.
funding models themselves.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Good questions to think about. Well, we'll be doing that, I think, probably next several meetings at least. But yeah, I'd like to actually spend more time thinking, maybe in the summer's open source meetings, about like how do we write a paper using, say, like an agent or agentic methods. I mean, maybe they're probably not. I mean, you can't just throw questions at it or prompts. You have to know kind of what you want in the first place, and then go kind of from there. So it's not a thing where you just cast a wide net to start with, and but yeah, it does take a long time. I think people think, no, you can pop out a paper in like 15 minutes. That's not.
Again, I mean, I've been basically banging on this for like almost 3 months, right? And like finally to the point where, and I'm specifically I'm doing very physicsy things.
Yeah.
Right? Where like there is an answer.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, like this is neuroimaging, but it's like diffusion neuroimaging, relaxometry, spectroscopy, magnetic and electrical fields. Like you can solve this in a sphere analytically before you start using complex geometries, and then you move to approximations and things like that. But like a lot of this is still, like I haven't done enough of the ALF stuff because I'm still working. I still want to have more better answers. I don't have the compute of the frontier teams that can be running experiments all the time.
Yeah.
But it is it's easy to produce a variety of results and variants in a way that you wouldn't have done if you were handwriting, hand coding.